Let's talk about our buildings, our offices, our homes, the places we spend almost all of our time. And let's ask a really important question. Are they actually ready for the future? A future that, as we all know, is getting a lot hotter and maybe faster than we think.
I mean, just think about the building you're in right now. It feels pretty permanent, right? Solid. But here's the thing. It was designed for a climate that is, well, rapidly becoming a thing of the past. So the real question is, will it be able to keep you comfortable and, more importantly, safe? Not just next year, but decades from now. Say, in the year 2080.
And this is really at the heart of the whole issue. Global average temperatures are already up by about 1.1 degrees Celsius. Now I know, that might not sound like a huge number, but that tiny change is enough to supercharge extreme weather, especially the brutal heat waves we're seeing more and more of.
And that gets us to the fundamental problem. The vast majority of our buildings were built for a milder, a more predictable world. As the temperature keeps climbing, these same buildings, with their big windows and sometimes outdated insulation, are at risk of becoming dangerous heat traps.
So, you've got architects and engineers now focusing on this idea of thermal resilience. It's a really simple but powerful concept. It's all about how well a building can protect us when things get extreme. Can it stay cool during a nasty heat wave, even if the power grid fails? That's the real test. That's the goal.
So, that brings us to our first section, the investigation. How in the world do you design for a future that you can't really predict? I mean, it's a huge challenge for architects, planning for a climate that is, by its very nature, so uncertain.
To try and get a handle on this, they use these really sophisticated tools called future weather files. Basically, these are incredibly complex data sets that try to project what the weather, we're talking temperature, sun, humidity, the whole shebang, will be like for a specific city way down the line in, say, 2050 or 2080.
Honestly, the best way to think about it is like having 3 different weather apps on your phone. But instead of forecasting for next Tuesday, they're all trying to forecast the weather for the year 2080. And just like your weather apps, they don't always agree.
Okay, so let's get into what that means. The research we're talking about looked at 2 main ways these future weather apps work. On one side, you have dynamical models. These are wild. They're basically building a mini atmosphere on a supercomputer using physics to simulate the future. On the other side, you have statistical models, which take today's real weather data and then mathematically stretch it and resample it to guess what tomorrow's patterns will look like. 2 totally different philosophies for predicting the future.
Okay, so if these are the best tools we have for looking into the future, what's the big deal? Where's the catch? Well, the problem is what happens when you ask these different models the exact same question,
Because the difference in what they tell you can be absolutely staggering. For instance, when researchers looked at the risk of a building overheating in 2080, one of the statistical models said the risk was 300% higher than what the physics-based model predicted. I mean, that's not just a small disagreement. That's a massive gap in understanding our future risk. And here's where it gets really tricky for the people designing these buildings. The study asked 3 different models. How much more air conditioning will a typical office need by 2080? The physics-based RCM model said, whoa, 150% increase. But then one statistical model predicted a 110% increase, and another one predicted only a 40% increase. They're all over the map.
So you see the dilemma, right? If you're the architect, what do you do? Do you design for that worst-case scenario and install a huge, really expensive AC system? Or do you aim for the more moderate prediction and risk it? If you get it wrong, you either waste a ton of money and energy, or you end up with a building that just can't handle the heat.
But here's the cool part. The research didn't just stop at the problem. It found a path forward. This brings us to section 2, the breakthrough. It turns out when the numbers are all over the place, you have to stop looking at the numbers and start looking at the strategy.
And this was a really surprising discovery. While the models could not agree on exactly how much hotter it was going to get or how much more energy we'd need, they almost perfectly agreed on the best ways to deal with the heat. So the what was uncertain, but the how was incredibly consistent.
And this consistency is absolutely key. Look, no matter which climate model you used, the most effective strategies to stop a building from overheating were always ranked in the same order. Number 1, every single time, was adding good solar shading. Number 2 was reducing the amount of glass, the window-to-wall ratio. And number 3 was using better performing windows. The order of what works best, it never changed.
And this, right here, is a total game changer. It means there are things called no-regret moves. An architect can confidently tell a client, we need to invest in high-quality solar shading, knowing with certainty that it's the right call no matter which version of 2080 actually happens. It gives them a clear, reliable path forward right through all that uncertainty. But, of course, it's not always that simple. Which brings us to Section 3, the trade-off. Because the research also made it really clear that even these no-regret moves can come with complicated choices. There's no single silver bullet here. Let's just take the big window dilemma. On the one hand, who doesn't love big windows? They let in all that amazing natural light, which is great, and it can seriously slash the energy you use for electric lights. But on the other hand, the study found that all that extra glass can increase the risk of the building overheating by over 50%. Plus, it dumps more heat out into the city around it.
See, what's happening is that designers are constantly trying to balance these competing goals, these key performance indicators, or KPIs. You're trying to lower the building's energy use, but you also have to make sure it doesn't get dangerously hot inside, and you have to think about how much heat the building is adding to the city. A choice that helps one of those goals can easily hurt another. It's a tough balancing act.
Okay, so let's bring it all home. What's the big takeaway from all this research? What does it actually mean for the people designing our future cities and, for the rest of us who are going to live and work in them?
The ultimate conclusion is actually one of cautious optimism. Yeah, the exact future is a bit of a blur, but we don't have to be paralyzed by that. By focusing on smart, evidence-based design, the strategies we know work, we can absolutely build a robust path forward. So, if there's one thing to remember from all this, it's this. Focus on the strategy, not just on the specific numbers. The best, most fundamental design principles, like smart shading, good insulation, and high-performance windows, hold true. They are our most reliable guides, even when the predictions for the future seem to vary wildly.
And that kind of leaves us with a final thought, one that goes way beyond just architecture. When we're facing any kind of uncertain future, whether it's in our climate, our careers, or our lives, maybe the most important question we can ask is this: what are our no-regret moves? What are the fundamental strategies that just make sense no matter what comes next?